to Hear. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. I'm so excited today to be bringing you Book Superlatives 2.0. I'm calling this sort of an original tag. There are other superlatives tags out there, but there have been no new ones in the last couple years, and I did add a couple new categories to this tag, so we're calling it 2.0. I feel like this is a great tag to do towards the end of the year that allows you to talk about a lot of books that might have been favorites for different reasons. Instead of just your all-time favorites of the year, we will get to an all-time favorite as well. But I think this is a great end of the year way to wrap up a lot of different kinds of categories in the books that we've read this year. So let's just jump right in. The first one is Class Clown, a book that made you laugh. I don't own this book, but I really could say all of the books in this series, but I think Grump by Liesl Shurtleff is the one that made me laugh the most. These are fairly true stories of popular fairy tales. So this year I've read Rump, Grump, Red, and Jack. I've read all four in this series and they're fantastic, and I definitely had laugh out loud moments in all of them, but I think Grump is the one that made me laugh the most. I highly recommend this middle grade series just for something light and fun. Number 2 is Biggest Drama Queen or Drama King, and this is a book with the most crazy plot that you've read this year. I don't know that this is the one with the most crazy plot, but I'm choosing The Guest List by Lisa Foley for this. I really think that Lisa Foley did a great job with this book. We are at a wedding on a remote island off the coast of Ireland, and so it's kind of a closed mystery. Only the people that are there for the wedding are involved. We don't know until right near the end who actually is the victim. We know there is a victim, but once you know who the victim is, it's hard then to figure out who killed that person, because you could imagine multiple people killing that person based on the relationships that she built up throughout the rest of this book. I didn't give this book 5 stars, but I did really enjoy it, and it definitely had some crazy twists and turns, and I think that this is a great choice for Drama Queen. Number 3 is The Life of the Party. Name a book that is a very hyped book that you read this year. And I think this might be the most hyped book that I read this year. It's Beach Read by Emily Henry. It was a book of the month, so a lot of people chose it for their book of the month. It also has been hyped because it is one of the Goodreads Choice Awards. I don't remember if it actually wins now that I think about it, but in the romance category. However, there are a lot of people who say that this isn't technically a romance book. And it's been talked about a lot because the cover and the title have really nothing to do with the story. But this book was definitely very hyped this year. In it, we follow 2 authors who knew each other in college. Now they are staying for a summer at a lake house, or at 2 houses on the shores of a lake, I believe in Michigan. And they're both having a little bit of struggle within their genres. They're both a little bit of writer's block. The girl, January, writes happily ever after romances, and the fella, Gus, or Augustus, he writes more thrillery or intense books, and they're both having a little struggle, so they kind of challenge each other to write in the opposite genre, the other person's genre. And of course, there's a romance that does ensue from there, does deal with some deeper things, but this was very hyped this year, so we're calling this The Life of the Party. Number 4 is The Best Dressed. Which book did you read this year that has a gorgeous cover? And I'm going with another book of the month pick that I read in January, The 10,000 Doors of January. I think this cover is stunning. There are keys. I don't know if you can see, there's like keys hanging from the flowers up here, the door in the middle. It's almost symmetrical, but a little bit different on each side. I love these covers that have kind of an all-around design, and I just think that that is really, really pretty. So this is my best dressed of 2020. Number 5 is The Most Unique. What book did you read this year that was the most out of your normal comfort zone? Did you read something that kind of was unique, was different from what you normally might have picked up? And this year for me, I'm going with The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. I ended up loving this book, and I was not prepared for that. This book is a thriller, and it has a ghost, and I don't think I've ever, that I can remember, on purpose, read a book with a ghost in it. And I don't read a lot of thrillers in general. So thrillers by themselves are out of my comfort zone, and then throw in a ghost as well, and that's very out of my comfort zone. But I absolutely loved this book. Loved. Now absolutely want to read more from Simone St. James. So this is my most unique of 2020. Number 6 is most likely to travel the world. What book did you read this year that took you to a new place? Maybe it's set in a different place or they traveled to a new place. And I'm going with The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. This one takes place in Spain during General Francisco Franco's regime. So it is historical fiction. We're going back in time a little bit, but we do get to see a lot of Spanish culture in here, from buildings and architecture. One of the main characters is a photographer, and so he goes around and loves to take pictures. We also get to see a Spanish family and their interactions with each other. We get to talk. It talks a lot about bullfighting in here, which is pretty cool and part of Spanish culture that's unfamiliar to me. So I'm calling this one most likely to travel the world. Number 7 is Cutest Couple. What is a book that you read this year that has a beautiful romance, or your favorite romance, or a romance that's super cute? I'm going to go with Lakeshire Park by Megan Walker. I read this one on NetGalley, so I don't have a copy of it. It is out right now, but in this book we follow Amelia and her younger sister Clara, and they are kind of down on their luck. Their stepfather is about to die. He's getting really old and he's not going to leave them anything. They have no fortune. They need to secure marriages to provide for themselves. Amelia and Clara are invited to a house party at Lakeshire Park, and they go with with Amelia having the intention of finding herself a husband. On the way, they run into Mr. Peter Wood, and Peter and Amelia butt heads right off the beginning. He comes across as incredibly arrogant and smug, and turns out he is at this house party as well. I absolutely loved the banter and the talk back and forth between Amelia and Peter throughout the book. It is definitely a slow burn. They're not falling head over heels for each other. It's not quite an enemies to lover because it's just like misunderstanding. It reminds me of kind of the feel of Pride and Prejudice, where those first impressions really impact their interactions moving forward. I really enjoyed this love story. I loved that it's a Regency romance. They barely even hold hands. Yeah, it just was very sweet and very fun watching their relationship develop throughout the book. So they win my Cutest Couple award for the year. Number 8 is most likely to surprise you. And for this one, choose a book that might be a hidden gem this year. One that wasn't really hyped, that kind of flew under the radar. Maybe it was a backlist book that you just want to bring some attention to. For this superlative, I'm giving the award of most likely to surprise you to Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth by Sheila O'Connor. This is a middle grade. It is an epistolary novel. It might not be for everyone, but I think that this book would surprise you if you read it. It has so much heart. In this book, we follow young Renee, who has moved with her brothers to her grandmother's house for the summer, and she gets a paper route, and on her route, she has this older gentleman who doesn't ever leave the house. She leaves him a note in the mailbox and he responds, and this begins a communication, a pen pal kind of relationship between the older gentleman and Renee. It is set during the time of the Vietnam War, and Renee is very concerned that her oldest brother, who is 18, could be drafted. She is convinced that he needs to go to college in order to avoid being drafted, but there's a lot of discussion about peace and about war and the draft, and the Vietnam War had so many heightened emotions during that time, and I just thought this book brought up a lot of really good discussion points, but also it's done in such a fun and beautiful way, and the relationship between this young 11-year-old girl, I think she was, and this older gentleman just is so cool. I absolutely loved this book. It has so much heart, and I think it would surprise you if you decided to give it a try as well. So there we have it. Number 9 is most likely to succeed. What book did you read this year that you think has potential to stand the test of time, that could still be popular years and years and years from now? I am giving that to Hollowpox. This is the 3rd book in the Nevermore series, and I think the whole series has definite potential to stand the test of time. I can't tell you too much about this one, but we continue to follow Morrigan Crow, who is our main character. In the first book, Morrigan has lived a cursed life, and she is fated to die on her 11th birthday. On the eve of her 11th birthday, Jupiter North swoops in and whisks Morrigan away to Nevermore, which is this land in the same world, but has a lot of magic and all those things, and it is so much fun. This whole series is incredibly creative. It is so fun, and it has really great adventures, little bits of mystery, found family. There are so many elements to this book that I think adults and middle graders alike could really enjoy, and I do think this series is going to last for quite a while. First of all, I think it's going to be 7 or 8 books, and we're only on 3, so it's going to be a while before it's even out, and I do think that years down the road, people will still be enjoying this series. Number 10 is most likely to be late for class. What book did you read this year that you just couldn't put down? I don't own this book, and I wish that I did because I loved it. I'm going with Wonderstruck, which is another middle grade. This is by Brian Selznick, and he incorporates writing with graphics, with pictures, beautifully drawn pictures. And this story involves a deaf character, which I love in my books. It involves family, and it has 2 storylines that we kind of alternate back and forth. One of the stories is told completely in pictures, and one of the stories completely in prose. And they're woven together, and by the end they connect, and it's so amazing. I think it's probably 500 pages or more. It feels like that. It's a really chunky book. I read it within a couple hours because I just couldn't stop. There was no way I was putting it down until I got to the end. So that is my award for most likely to be late for class. Number 11 is most likely to brighten your day. What book just makes you smile? When you think of it, when you think of the characters, it just brings a smile to your face. For that, I am going with a surprise choice for me. That is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. This was a sleeper book for me. Every time people talked about this book, I did not have any interest in picking it up. But then Katie from Life Between Words hosted a Zoom way back at the beginning of the pandemic, or early summer, I think. Katie hosted a Zoom where Amor Towles was going to be on talking about this book. I'm like, oh, I need to read this and I want to participate. Maybe now is the time. This book is set in Russia, clearly Moscow, and we follow Count Rostov, who has been court mandated to live out the rest of his life on house arrest, basically, at this hotel. This is a real hotel in Moscow, and Count Rostov is just the most delightful character. I assumed that this was going to be a very boring book because we follow this man in this hotel for 40 years or so, and he doesn't ever leave the hotel. I'm like, oh my word, that sounds like the most boring book ever. But it's not at all. I love the relationships that he has. I love his outlook on life. He's delightful. He's so kind and just such a positive man, even in the midst of these circumstances that had been given to him, that he's kind of forced to be at this hotel forever. I love the found family that he develops. I love so much about this book. I love how it's written. I loved that discussion with Amor Towles, and definitely this is a book that when I think of it, it makes me smile. On the opposite side of things, we have the best shoulder to cry on. What book this year made you cry? I could pick a lot. I cry a lot in books, for sure. 2 that stand out to me. This is the only one I'm cheating on because I just had to talk about the second one, but Still Alice by Lisa Genova I read very early in the year, and this book had me sobbing. I love Lisa Genova and how she takes a look at different neurological diseases or disorders or accidents or whatever in the brain. This one in particular, we follow Alice, who has early onset Alzheimer's. We really are walking right alongside of her as the Alzheimer's becomes more and more difficult to deal with, both for her and for her family members. Yeah, I was sobbing in this book. I still haven't watched the adaptation, but I definitely want to. The other book that I just wanted to talk about, and I didn't fit it into any of the other ones, but I'm going to say Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. This one had me crying at the end as well. I loved this book so much. This one takes place in Depression-era Kentucky in the Appalachian Mountains, and we follow the Pack Horse Librarian Project and this group of women who work together in this small town. We follow all of these different women, but one in particular who is from England and married somebody and came back to town, and things just aren't what she expected when she gets there. And so she joins the Pack Horse Librarians and gets to know the other women. And the way that these women stand together and fight alongside of each other, one of them ends up getting accused of murder. And so there's a little murder trial, there's a little murder trial at the end. But definitely this book brought tears to my eyes. I love it so much. Had to be included in this list, so I'm putting it as another shoulder to cry on. 3 more to go. Next is Most Opinionated. What is a book that broadened your perspective this year? I am going with a book that I just read in November, Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. The tagline on here is Illness, Medicine, and What Matters in the End. And that is what this book is all about. It's about aging. And I think this really made me think about what matters at the end of life. How can I have better conversations as I get older and my mother gets older and we're not anywhere near any of this stuff that gets talked about in this book yet, but I feel like I have a better foundation of things that I'll want to make sure to talk with her about before we even get to that point. But it made me miss my grandmother, who is in a nursing home. Talked about hospice and palliative care and assisted living situations. There are a ton of anecdotes in here. It did make me cry multiple times, but it definitely broadened my perspective about aging, about how in America as a culture, we're failing our elderly over and over and over. Yeah, it made me think a lot. It made me think a lot. So this is one that I'm calling Most Opinionated this year. Number 14 is Most Unforgettable, a book that you cannot stop thinking about. And I suppose I'm cheating a little because I only just read this book in November. So it's only been a month, not even a month, I think, since I read it. But I feel like this is going to be a book that I will not ever stop talking about and not ever stop thinking about. And that is Fighting Words by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. In this middle grade novel, we follow 2 sisters who were sexually molested by a caregiver, a stepdad or mom's boyfriend. I forget his exact relationship with them. They are able to get out of the home, but it's like the after effects of that. So it deals with mental health. It deals with attempted suicide. It deals with the foster care system. It deals with school and friendships and teachers and how these girls are treated and what expectations are placed on them. How they handle and respond to the events that were kind of forced upon them. It's important. It's difficult. I don't think I will ever stop thinking about this book, and recommending parents pick this book up and read it together with their children. Read it first and then read it together with their kids, because I think it will allow and help direct many conversations that just need to be had in this age group. So unforgettable. Definitely deserving of this superlative. And finally, best all around. I know some of you might not want to answer this question because you're saving that for your best of the year videos, but I have been talking about my best of the year since February. So I have no problem answering best all around. You can pick like your top 3. Do this however you want to. If you're not prepared to give away your top of the year, I'm okay with that. You do whatever works best for you. But for me, easily my best book of the year is The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. This is a nonfiction memoir by Anthony Ray Hinton, who was incarcerated for 30 years. He was wrongfully convicted. He was wrongfully convicted and spent 30 years on death row. This man is remarkable. His story is inspiring and challenging, infuriating at times, very full of hope and heart and frustration. And I just think that this was so well done. I would put it in everybody's hands if I could. I love this book so much. I called it as my favorite of the year, like I said, in February. And absolutely, I'm saying that this is my best all-around book in 2020. And I think everybody should read it. Even if you don't read a lot of nonfiction, it flows, it's smooth, it's easy. Read this book. That is it. That is 15 superlatives for the end of the year. I think this is a great way to talk about a lot of books that you might not talk about in your best of or worst of lists at the end of the year. So I'm going to make a list down in the description box below of a whole bunch of people. I would love to see you do this tag. If you decide to do it, go ahead and put your link in the comments. I'll pop over and watch yours as well. I would love to hear from you down in the comments though. What is one of the most unforgettable books that you read this year? A book that you just can't stop thinking about. Let's chat about that or anything else you want to talk about down in the comments below. You guys know I love talking with you down there. Give this video a big thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already. I hope that you're having a wonderful December, and I will talk to you very soon in another video. Bye.